Welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast. We have Cindy Machles with us today. Cindy's a marketing strategist, a brand builder, founder, startup mentor that is. She's a board member and a top 100 innovator and entrepreneurs. She's a next chief, which is a top mastermind for power women. I would describe it. I had another chief member right before you today, Cindy. So welcome to the podcast. Tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Well, thanks, Charles. So yeah, I wear a lot of hats. I'm lucky I get to do what I love. So I have a advertising agency called Glue. And then I'm chief marketing officer of an AI company called Secure Check. And then as you kind of intimated, I mentor startups, and I just finished a mentoring of a number of women founders through Springboard Enterprises, which was really great. And I've mentored startups through my alma mater, University of Chicago, through the Polsky Center there. So just honestly, I get to have a lot of fun most days and wear a lot of different hats.
Right. And you started in corporate. I see the Church and Dwight, which is a Harm and Hammer here. I see Johnson and Johnson and a bunch of big brands. What prompted you to start your own agency in 2014?
Honestly, I'm a bit of an accidental entrepreneur. It wasn't something that I had planned to do. And as happens with so many people, there are life events that move you in that direction. And in my case, my mother was sick. She had Alzheimer's disease. She fell and broke her hip. One of those crazy times where I'm on the phone to work, I'm helping my family. I was actually overseas in Switzerland. And it was just that moment where it occurred to me that I've always wanted to do something more entrepreneurial. If not now, when? And if I'm going to work as hard as I do, I want to do it for myself. I had started a company within WPP called Brand Edge, so I had done it once. And I felt as if I had one more in me and I was going to do it for myself.
My grandmother also suffered from Alzheimer and broke her hip and all that. How did you go through this? Because it's a very painful process, right? It's like seeing them fade away mentally, because humans, we have this thing called the brain and the personality. And if that goes away, it's super painful to see like someone mentally discapacitated at that stage of their life. So how did you go through it on your side?
So I think for any woman who has had a mother with Alzheimer's disease, I don't know any woman, but for me, I was very close to my mother. And I felt as if for at least 10 years before she passed, she wasn't my mother. She was you. So Alzheimer's, as you say, it affects the brain, but it also takes away the fundamentals of who the person is. So she was still lovely, and she understood that I was a family member. She started to think I was her cousin, who was a younger person, was her best friend. And so we still had a relationship, but it was a very different relationship. And, sadly, she passed, and it was really Alzheimer's was the cause at the end of the day. But at a certain point, that person is not living the quality of life that you know that they would want.
Right. And entrepreneurship, has it given you what you wanted out of it since all these years? Because entrepreneurship is pretty hard, right? It's like playing hard mode, life in hard mode most of the time. So how's it been since the last decade for you?
So entrepreneurship, a lot of people feel like, wouldn't it be great to be my own boss? And they leave big companies with that idea. And you have a whole different set of issues that you're confronting. So for example, I remember we had been in business with Glue. So that was my first entrepreneurial endeavor for about 2 months. And we had been sending out invoices. We had clients. And all of a sudden I'm realizing that we have no money in the bank. I'm not sure how we're going to make payroll, only because it wasn't on purpose that our clients hadn't paid us, but our invoices had just gotten stuck in their system somehow. And I was just used to being at a big company. You don't have to worry about is there enough money in the bank to make payroll? You certainly sometimes have overdue invoices, but there's a whole different level of pressure when it comes to running your own business and having employees who you're responsible for. And I even remember when I hired employees, I didn't hire anyone until I tossed and turned for 2 weeks and didn't feel as if I could do all the work myself. Because in the beginning, when you start a company, you feel like you don't want to take anyone out of a real job to come work for you because somehow you don't think it's a real job yet.
I understand that as well. I think the imposter syndrome most of the time is pretty hard and more intense if you're a woman most of the time. Have you seen that in fellow chief members?
So I honestly, this idea of imposter syndrome is something that I really dislike, I have to say. And I think that everybody has self-doubts about something. We're not confident all the time that we can do everything. And we need to be challenging ourselves to try things that we haven't tried before. I think that perhaps women were not as comfortable talking about our accomplishments. We almost feel as if our accomplishments should speak for themselves. And that's something I teach a class every summer at Columbia. And I've had young women from the class come up to me and say, how can I talk about my accomplishments without bragging? And I always say to them, take the idea of bragging out of the picture completely. You should feel comfortable talking about what you have done in a very authentic way with metrics to back up your success. And when you do that, you're not bragging.
Right. I feel also sometimes you receive negative feedback from clients, and clients are not always in a position to give you feedback about your work. They don't even know what you're doing most of the time. And I feel also the competition, right? And the competitors, what they do most of the time, they do false advertising or over the top claims, which are not necessarily true. And then you compare yourself to these and you're like, what am I if these guys are generating 10x more results than I do, right? But in reality, it's just like false flag type of marketing.
One of my friends who coaches senior people and coaches teams, he gave me a piece of advice which has stuck with me. And it's a golf analogy, and I'm not a golfer, but I think anyone can understand it. And it is play the green. So instead of being distracted by everything around you that's outside of your control, or competitors who you feel, gosh, it sounds like they're doing so much better, or whatever, kind of what you just said, you're much better off focusing on the opportunity in front of you and giving it your best. And if you do that, you will succeed.
Right. And talking about golf analogies, sometimes you might be stuck in the pit, but you're very close to the flag, like some people don't realize that they came such a long way to be that close to the flag. And most people just abandon before making that short, easy shot, Talking about that, do you feel that AI has disrupted your specific market? Do you feel that it will replace a bunch of jobs pretty soon?
So I'm a contrarian on AI negativity. I'm very positive about AI. And there are a couple reasons why. First of all, I like the fact that it takes away tedious, boring activities. So much better for automation to be doing that than humans. And then what I like is, I think of AI as a partner, a companion, not something that's going to replace us. I feel that it's going to give us the ability and insights very quickly at our fingertips to be more creative, which is where the human intelligence comes in. So I'm excited about that part of it. I'm also excited that I feel that it level sets access to knowledge. So it's much easier for all of us to be able to get information than ever before about concepts and ideas that we can use to jumpstart our careers or jumpstart ideas. And then for those people who are worried about hallucinations, and certainly we all have to be cautious about that, but there's been a lot of false information on the internet for a very long time. And so my thinking is that being aware of hallucinations and the fact that we have to guard against them has made us better consumers of content than we used to be.
Interesting. By the way, you wouldn't be contrarian in that. Like most CEOs and founders that I speak to actually think that AI is not going to replace a bunch of jobs. I think so just because right now we have ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I'm at the other side of the argument here. I think AI is going to slash a bunch of jobs because we're about to enter the agentic age, right? So right now we have an AI that follows our orders for some specific reason because OpenAI wants it so for AI safety, right? But soon we're about to hit the agentic phase in which AI are going to have goals and they're going to go out there and accomplish stuff by themselves, like an employee would, right? And these things learn 1,000 times faster than we do. They're also like interconnected with a bunch of other APIs and data sources. So it's just going to be interesting to see that. For example, on my end, I run a cold email agency. The copywriters have been replaced by AIs. The researchers have been replaced by AIs.
Yeah.
So it's just me and a bunch of AIs nowadays. Don't you feel that a bunch of companies would modernize themselves like that and not have much human employees in the equation?
Well, one of my kids said to me, if AI replaces everybody, who's going to pay for what AI creates? So I don't think it's going to work that way, right? I mean, I think every innovation throughout time, even when the internet became the internet, there was the feeling that, oh my God, what does this mean for jobs? I think that jobs are going to change. So you're saying that AI is replacing copywriters. It's replacing copywriters in the way they used to do their work. I feel that the front end creativity of copywriting is still something that is human driven. I think a lot of derivative content and content that is not relying on creativity, that is something that AI can do and should do. I think it makes sense to automate that. As I've said, one of the companies that I work with, SecureCheck AI, what we're doing is we're streamlining the approval process in healthcare. And that means that instead of copywriters having to relook at every piece over and over again, content they've seen a million times, and reviewers having to do the same, AI will do that. And it will make approvals go faster. That will allow us to bring marketing materials to people, to doctors, to patients sooner. And that will allow us to improve outcomes. So there will be changes. There will be changes, but I don't think it's as extreme as what people worry about.
Right. The buyer thing is interesting, right? Because I think UBI will have to kick in very quickly. That's why OpenAI, I guess, is like on the quote unquote nonprofit side of things. And Sam Altman's working on the Orb and the WorldCoin, which sounds like sci-fi, right? But ChatGPT did sound like sci-fi just a couple of years ago. I think UBI will become a thing to fund these folks that cannot participate in the economy. I don't think the 1% will go away, right? We'll always adapt because I think we were built that way. We were built to go towards Spain rather than pleasure, most of us, entrepreneurs and CEOs. But I do think that most humans, if given the choice, they would decide not to work, right? And it's just interesting also the point you made about creativity, because I think AI can be creative just by mixing out two things and creating something that is quote unquote novel. And also when we think of creativity, these things have been done in the past, so they're not really novel. It's really hard to create something that novel as a copywriter even. And if so, if that person creates something novel, my AI agent can instantly go and copy it. So it's just about like prompting it, right? It's copy paste, improve. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, copyright protections is a whole other aspect of how we're going to manage AI that I think is being worked out. But my experience with AI creativity is there are a few ideas. If you ask it to kind of brainstorm with you, there are a few basic ideas that emerge. And then after that, it's the same redundant ideas over and over again. So I think that its brainstorming and its creativity is very limited, at least right now. Where that will go, we'll have to see, of course. But again, just as AI adapts, humans adapt. And so it could be that the creativity of AI goes in one direction, and the way that humans supplement that working with AI goes in a different direction. So there are some things that I mean, I don't have a crystal ball for everything. So there are some aspects of this that are wait and see.
Right. You brought up an interesting point, which I agree with, which is I think we only scratch the surface when it comes to the human brain, right? Like we don't fully understand how it works and its capacity and intuition as a super skill, for example. And I think, yes, and we're already seeing that, aren't we? Like I've been, I don't know, like way smarter than I was when I didn't have AI, right? Like I've learned with this thing quite a lot and I've evolved with it. So there's going to be like certainly an aspect of that. Yeah, no, it's quite interesting. But the creativity thing, I think, is just about like prompting it a different way if you want different answers. And I think the limitation, and most of the time, is our human brain, right? Like we keep asking the same question because our memory is sort of limited. But yeah, for now, yeah, I just had like a prediction expert on the podcast right before you. It's super hard to make predictions and super hard to be right, especially on the timeline, right? Like the timeline is always incredibly hard. But yeah, like me, I'm pretty sure it will happen. I'm just like not sure when. On the day to day, how do you leverage AI on your side? Do you do deep research for your clients? Do you use it for copywriting, for your social media posts? Like, how do you leverage it?
So basically, we leverage it for a bit of brainstorming. As far as copywriting, we need to be very cautious because a lot of the work that we're doing is on healthcare products that are pre-market, or we're in situations where NDAs we've signed would govern what we can allow to escape into the public domain. So we have to be very, very careful about it. But I would say brainstorming, if I have to write a reference for somebody, because that's going to go into the public domain, I will use it for that. Sometimes I'll use it for deep research, again, because that's not a confidentiality issue. So I'm always mindful when I think about, AI could help with that. What might be the pitfalls of using it here?
Right. And tell me about like your current client set. Like, who are you targeting with your Glue marketing agency? Like, who are you going after? Is it mid-size? Is it like some specific industries as well?
So we focus on regulated industries and with a very strong emphasis on healthcare. And part of the reason for that is before starting Glue, both my partner and I spent years and years in healthcare, and that gives us a tremendous advantage because we know just about the ins and outs and claims and science of every disease area that you can imagine. And you can't just one day as an agency person open an agency and say, I'm going to do healthcare. In fact, sometimes we are surprisingly locked out of a rare disease for consideration because we haven't worked in that one precise disease. So that can be a bit of a rate limiting factor. And as far as how we get our clients, for the most part, it's word of mouth. We've been in the industry a long time. We have a lot of contacts, and I'm happy to say that we have strong relationships and good reputations. And so people we've worked with before typically call us and say, guess what? I really need you. It's nice to hear.
And does working in a compliance heavy industry, does that limit your creativity or increase it?
So it's so interesting that you gave me both choices. And I would, if you said limit, I was going to say increase. And part of the reason is that if you look at people who are creative, what they say is it's very helpful to understand the guardrails, because when you're trying to be creative and anything is possible, it's you get, you're stuck. You don't even know where to begin. So not only are we governed by the fact that we work in regulated industries, but we're governed by understanding the target audience unmet needs, turning that into insights, having a positioning for the product, having reasons to believe for the product that include the data, which is a shorthand way of saying that we're working with creative briefs. And so not only do we understand the legal, medical, regulatory rules that we're working within, but we also make sure that we are aligned on strategy before we can start just brainstorming willy-nilly, because that doesn't get you anywhere and that doesn't build brands.
Interesting. So what are your top goals for this year? What do you want to achieve with the company?
You know what? I feel as if certainly we always want to continue growing. I like when we can move into new disease areas because it's just interesting. I'm a person who gets bored by doing the same thing over and over again. So I enjoy when we have a mix of projects that we're working on, maybe branding, broadcast, an association, supporting them with patient materials. So I like the variety and will continue to do that and grow in those areas. I'm also very interested in seeing how we can use Secure Check AI, which we work in concert with, to eventually start to not only check materials to make sure they're compliant, but ultimately create materials, because the compliance process starts with matching new materials against a brand library where all of the claims are housed, all of the references are housed. Given that, I believe that we can pull from the claims library and create new materials at a faster rate and know from the get-go that they're going to be approved because we are starting with content that's already been approved.
Interesting. And where can people find out more about you, Cindy?
I'm easily findable on LinkedIn, and my email address is Cindy, CINDY, @glue, GLUE, advertising.com.